Hey everyone, this is Beacon. I'm the Poi Mechanic, and in this video I'm going to show you how I'm making my new setup on my contact Poi. I'm using Technora rope. For those of you who don't know what Technora is a super high strength, flame resistant rope. I've been using this on my fire Poi and it's been great. Just occurred to me to use it on my contact Poi. The reason I'm switching over is I had been using polypropylene rope and the stuff just isn't too satisfactory. It shrinks over time. I've had Poi sets shrink a couple inches over time, and I hate to have to switch out the leashes constantly. This stuff doesn't shrink. It remains flexible after you use it, unlike polypropylene. It can get stiff in spots that you hold on to it a lot versus spots you don't. Now, on fire Poi, you do what's called a Brummel splice, where if you don't know how Technora works, it's basically, it starts off at a 1/4 inch Technora, you feed it through itself, and it gets to be about 3/8 inch. When you do fire Poi, you feed the rope through itself, and then you feed it back through itself and then down through the center. What that does is it creates a locking splice, but it also kind of creates a little bulky mass right here. Where this setup, because I'm fusing the ends together like I'm doing with my, my contact, or the polypropylene rope, since I'm fusing the ends together, it takes out the need for a splice right here. So it makes for a nice smooth transition on these swivels. If you're not making swivels, you can still if you're not making set with swivels, you can still watch the video, because I have, more information on like how to put them into the handles and stuff. If you're just doing a straight through rope. Now I get all my stuff from a Etsy shop called Flow on Fire. They're a great company. They sell all the parts that you need to make this setup. They're not selling Technora's Poi, but they do sell other contact Poi, and their stuff is great. I highly recommend them. You can check the link in the description below, and I should have a promo code up there if you want free shipping. Anyways, let's get started on how to make this. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is, as I said, I'm going to create a cone on the end of my rope like I did this. Now, this is just my method. You don't have to use this method. You can fuse the ropes together using the epoxy like I'm going to do, but you can just fuse them together and put a washer on the end and then try to push it through the ball and hope it doesn't slit. The reason I do it this way with the cone on the end is because I don't slit my contact balls. So a lot of companies out there will slit the ball, run a rope through the hole, pull it out through this slit, tie the knot, and then pull it back through and then glue up the slit. The slit will bust over time. Some people have been lucky and they don't have them come loose, but most of the ones I've seen eventually come loose, and it doesn't look very clean. So if you push a big fat washer through there all at once, it oftentimes has a tendency to split the hole. So the cone just kind of like gradually increases the hole size, and then it pops in there and then creates it's like the same thing as a washer on the back side. Now, the way I do this is I create a mold out of the wood here, and I use something called a step bit. You can get this step bit at Ace Hardware or any hardware store like that. And what a step bit is it's basically a drill bit that drills different hole sizes up to the size you want. In this case, I'm going to use a nylon washer on the back side of it, which is going to be the size of 11/16. You can get these nylon washers at Home Depot or Ace Hardware as well. Anyways, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating the mold, or creating the plug with a 5-minute epoxy. I also get this stuff at Ace Hardware. It is 5-minute non-gel 5-minute epoxy. It comes either with or without the applicator tip. I recommend the applicator tip because it mixes the epoxy as you go. The other stuff, you have to mix it and then pour it in. And then, if you're doing a couple sets at once, it's really sets up really quick. So it's easier just to have the syringe that mixes it as it goes. I'm going to go ahead and put the Technora on my swivel and then go ahead and fill that up. I'll tape my Technora with electric tape and tape it real nice and tight, and then Run it through. It's a nice and tight fit on a size 7 swivel. So if you're getting any bigger than this as far as your Technora goes, I recommend getting a size 8 or 9 swivel. The swivels I use are Krok Billfisher swivels, which Flow on Fire doesn't sell this particular swivel as far as I know. This is one you have to go online. They're pretty expensive, but they're like a double action. So this side spins and this side spins. Makes for really nice orbitals if you're doing orbitals like me. Anyways, I'll pull that all the way through. And then I'll measure it up to the set I'm going to be matching it with. And I'm going to do it a little bit longer just to be safe. Now in Technora, there's ways to get the Technora on the inside part of the rope. I use a fid. It's a splicing fid that's made specifically for 12-strand Technora. I got this at dark-monk.com. It's another flow website out there. You can use a coat hanger that you've taped the rope to and then round the end. It doesn't work all that well compared to this, so I recommend one of these. So now on Technora, I don't know if it shows up in the video or not, but you basically squeeze this together and you're going to feed the fid through the opening. Now, if you can see, there's V's right here. This V is pointing this way. If you rotate it a little bit, you'll see that this V is pointing this way. You'll want to feed the rope through itself, going down the V with the V pointing down as if it's an arrow. When you do this, pay attention to make sure that you are getting the fid right in the center, because if you're on one side of the strand, you might be on a side of 2 strands versus 1 strand over here, and it'll basically create a lopsided, it'll look lopsided once you finish it up. So bunch it up as you go. It'll make it go through the Technora a lot easier. Then you're going to take your end and stick it in here in the hole, and there's a little hook right there that hooks onto your rope, and keep feeding it through. And what I'm going to do is feed it through all the way until it's starting to bury my swivel in the outer rope. Just bunch it up and then smooth it out, and that by pinching on the inside part on the fid there, and it makes the rope keep going back. I'll push on this and see it started burying the ring right there, which I want to do that at first, because now when I pull on the ring on the outer rope, the inner rope that goes into the outer rope starts right here. If you don't do it that way, the inner rope can be way down here. So just for aesthetics, I like to do that so it looks nice and tight right there. And then you pull it real nice and tight all the way down. Now check it out down here once you're done, because a lot of times you'll have a strand, one of the 12 strands will be sticking out. It'll create a little loop. If you get one of those, like that one's not really doing it, but if you get one, follow it down and then pull on it and keep twisting the rope and then pulling on it, and then work it all the way out until you get to the end down here, and that'll make it look nice and smooth. Now the fid's buried, so you'll just want to open up the rope down here and pull it out. Then you will unhook that and start on this end again and pull it, and it will pull the rope inside and make it nice and clean there. So next part is we are going to tape this off so we can tape it nice and tight, and then we're gonna put the washer over this. But first we got to cut this. Now, cutting Technora, it can be a pain in the butt, so regular scissors won't work, or definitely won't do it very easily or smoothly. Fresh razors seem to be the best. If you've cut it a few times, your razor starts to get dull. So anyways, cut that right there. That worked out pretty good. Now I'm fitting the washer over it. And next, I'm going to measure exactly where I want this washer to be on the inside of my ball. And then I'm going to take electric tape, and I'm going to wrap it around here and double it up, or actually, you know, quadruple or whatever up the tape, so it creates a nice lip so this won't slide back up. And the reason I'm doing it this way is once I stick it inside the hole right here to put the epoxy in, I'm going to push this down, and a lot of this epoxy is going to squeeze out. And if you put the tape right here, it keeps the epoxy from coming out on the inside of the washer and messing up your Technora. So I'm going to go ahead and get that measured up and get started on the mold. Okay, so I got my mark done here, and I'm ready to cut it. Make sure you got it right, because you can't add any more of this expensive stuff. So I recommend doing these in twos, like if you're, or twos or even threes if you're quick enough. I'm only doing one right now because I have a set of poi that I'm just trying to match it up to for a third poi. But if you do it in twos, it makes for measuring a lot easier. When you cut this, you'll want to cut it at, I don't know, about 3/8 inch, or the width of this deep. So about 3/8 inch away from the washer. And get it nice and straight. Now on the mold here, you want to put a mold releasing agent of some sort in there. I use chapstick or lip balm. Something that's waxy like this seems to work pretty well, because this epoxy will stick to a lot of things, including wood, so you don't want to not be able to release this. This epoxy is pretty nasty stuff, so I recommend wearing gloves, being in a well-ventilated area, and keeping it away from things you don't want to getting on, including the leash. Now, if you ever think that you might be replacing the leash in the future for a different length or for whatever reason, there's an extra step you can take that'll make it pull out a lot easier. What I would recommend doing is taking another strand of your Technora, get a little tail or something like that, and I would drill a hole into the bottom of that that this will kind of hide in, and I would even use some chapstick or something on this so the epoxy doesn't stick to it too much. So what I'm thinking is, if you stick this down inside that hole, pack it in there, and then leave a little bit of it up in here, when you inject the epoxy in there, it will just feed up around the cone and it'll leave a tail out. So what you would do is, if you needed to replace this, you would cut the tether right there at the ball and push it through, and then that little tail will be in there that you can grab, pull out the hole, and then pull the cone out in reverse. I'm pretty sure that will work. I haven't tried that yet, but I don't know why it wouldn't. For this demonstration, I am doing, I've got a, let's see, I think it's 11/16 washer. That's the outside diameter in this hole right here. And I'm basically, what I'm going to do is, since the epoxy doesn't stick to this nylon very well, if for whatever reason I was to pull this cone out after I've cut it off, that washer would be in there, so I wouldn't want that. So I'm going to, as soon as I get this cone made up on here, I'm just going to cut this washer off. And that would be the same as the next size down would be a 5/8 inch hole right here with a 5/8 inch washer. The cone will be the size of this 5/8 inch washer. What's nice about this is this cone, both or these washers both will sit in there nice and flush. And another reason to use the washer versus just setting it in there is the washer will center your Technora right in the center of the cone, which is definitely what you want. Alrighty, have a skewer on hand or a toothpick of some sort, because what you're gonna have to do probably is, for one, you're gonna get some epoxy in here. You want to work it around so the inside fibers get bonded to the outside fibers, and then when you press it down there, you might have some fibers sticking out, and you just want to kind of like push them in there. Another reason to do two at once is you get two tips. So say you're doing two plugs, and then your next tip you'll use for your handles. So otherwise you'll just have to be mixing it by hand, and that, as I said, kind of sucks. Alright, time to get started here. Oh, another thing on this syringe here, a lot of times, they'll have air bubbles in each side here. Sometimes the air bubbles are uneven, so when you go to start squeezing on it, it will put uneven amounts of epoxy out. So what I do is I set the syringe up like this until the bubbles rise to the top, and then slowly squeeze on it until the bubbles, or most of the bubbles, are out. And then, set it up like this for a minute or whatever to let all the bubbles rise to the top. And then start squeezing on it, because that'll be a much better way to get a clean mixture, even mixture. I'm going to start by working this stuff into the center of this and getting this nice and gooey all the way around there. And even do it around the sides. And then fill this up. You don't have to fill it up all the way, just fill it up enough that you squeeze this in there. It'll as I said, start pushing out, start overflowing. And then kind of a pain to get these in here, but just keep working at it. And that's what's nice about the washer, is it also kind of like pushes things all the way in there. If for whatever reason you can't get them all in there completely, don't worry about it if you have one sticking out or whatever, because you can just cut it once it's finished here. Now, as you see, I have a lot of excess here, and I would recommend getting that off, away from your washer, because you don't want to have to cut a bunch of it off. When this starts getting a little warmer here and starts setting up, so it's not going to be as sticky, it's a good time to take a razor and just scrape around this, and that'll make it so it comes off nice and easy. Make sure it's straight up and down like that, and I'm going to let this sit for a few minutes, and then we'll pop that thing out of there. Alright, I'm going to let that keep drying here, work on my handles. The best way I figured out how to do this is to, depending on the handle you have, I use play knobs, so the hole's nice and small, and it's kind of hard just to push this through here. I stick needle nose through, open it up so I can grab the ring, and then carefully pull the rope through until you expose the upper ring, and then feed that through here. As a side note, if you are using Technora on your fire poi, a lot of people still run the Brummel splice on the poi head, and then one on the knob, and then you kind of meet them up in the middle here, and it's really not that nice of a smooth rope. So you can do the same thing as I'm doing through the ring here. Imagine this was on your poi head, and then just run this all the way up until your handle, and fuse it together up there, and that way you won't have any breaks on the inside of your rope there. Now there's a good example of those little loops I was talking about there. As I said, find where the loop goes to, and start pulling it all the way down till you get to the end there. All right, now I'm going to pull this out so I can get this put in my poi head and get the final measurement. Should pull out pretty easy. If it doesn't, if you have it wide enough, you can put your feet on this and then yank up on this pretty good. Okay, came out pretty easy. That's what you're left with. Nice little cone. And it's still a little soft there. I would probably should have left it on a little bit longer. I mean, it didn't affect anything, but it's good to leave it on maybe 20-30 minutes just to be safe. If for whatever reason, once you pull this out, you have little air pockets on here or places that didn't get fully epoxied, don't worry about it, because when you start putting epoxy in here, you can put a little bit more on here and smooth it out. And as you see there, it didn't get any epoxy right there. So this should break apart pretty easy from the epoxy. If it doesn't, take a razor blade and kind of go in there to break it free. Don't go too deep though, because you don't want to cut into your Technora. Okay, and there you go. Broke free. If you have needle nose pliers, or not needle nose, but wire cutters, they work pretty good. Just be careful not to get your Technora, and then should break free like that. And this is, as I said, only if you're gonna plan on taking it out in the future, taking the plug out. I'm not planning on it, but I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. I would also recommend just lubing this up just a tad bit before you stick it through the hole there. Chapstick should work a little will do. Okay, start pushing it through there. If you have a really soft Mr. Babashi ball or something like that, it goes in really easy. If you have a harder ball, it's a little trickier, but take your needle nose pliers and pinch on the back side right here and just push it through until it pops. That's in there solid, so let's start on the handle. The reason I put the handle on first is I'm going to start pulling this way, and it will make this these fibers nice and tight and constrict the outer rope to the inner rope. So yeah, it's important that you don't cut this before you do this, because if you do, when you're pulling this, the inner rope will start pulling back and the outer rope will stay out. That's not good. Once you get your measurement, you're going to want to cut the rope and be careful when you're cutting it. Cut it nice and flat. If you don't have it nice and straight, that is, you'll have fibers sticking up, and it kind of sucks when you're trying to get this finished here. I've cut it, I'll cut it around, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch away from my handle, and then I'll pull it in. And there you go. So now I'm going to match up this handle with this handle, and I'm going to have to pull it a ways in. Now, be careful when you're doing that so the inner core doesn't separate from the outer core. So either pinch really tight or use pliers and do the same thing. And okay, I'm ready now. So make sure you have a skewer ready or a toothpick again, because you're going to want to work around these fibers and get the inside and outside bonded together. And you'll want to go all the way around the edge on the inside here and get it to the very bottom. I'm not using a washer on this. This will solidify and the plug will be just fine, but you want to make sure to get it all the way down to the bottom. I'm using silicone knobs. The epoxy doesn't really stick to it, but I'm going to go ahead and put it around the outside right here just in case it does for whatever reason. You have little impurities in your, or imperfections in your knob, it might stick to it. And I put a new tip on because the other one was definitely dried up. Now you don't have to go, you know, you don't have to fill this thing all the way up to the top to create this plug, especially if you like lighter knobs or whatever. I just like to do it because, for one, this Technora is a little heavier, so it kind of throws the weight off maybe a slight bit, so I like full weight in here. But also, it just kind of makes it look nicer. When it's finished here, you'll see. So I like bringing mine all the way up to the top here. But be careful if you've waited too long. This stuff will start to dry and it won't level itself. That is the final product right there. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment in the comment section below. Any suggestions, if you have other ways of doing it, I'd be glad to hear about it. And if you use this method on some of your products, all I ask is that you give me some recognition. That would be great. If you have any products you want me to review of yours, you can send them my way, and I'd be happy to do so. And please like and subscribe to my videos. I hope to have some more out in the future here. My next endeavor is to create fire poi leashes that don't have this splice in the middle. I'm going to try to run it all the way up to the swivel here and figure out a way to bond everything in the swivel. So yeah, stay tuned, and thanks for watching.